Picture this. You're walking into your Cambridge Information Technology 9626 exam feeling completely prepared, only to drop an entire grade boundary because of a single, invisible trap. Today, we are going to expose the one tiny mistake that costs candidates critical marks in Section 1.1 before they even realize what hit them. Let's get straight into it.
Look at this sentence right here. The census data shows population growth. Now, if you're sitting in that exam hall sweating against the clock, you might write this down and actually feel pretty good about yourself. I mean, it seems factually correct, right? It's a standard, completely logical statement about indirect data.
But here is the brutal reality. That answer, it earns exactly 0 marks. Absolutely nothing. Zilch. This highlights the exact problem we see constantly. It lacks analytical depth, it lacks specific context, and it fundamentally ignores the assessment framework that prioritizes deep reasoning over superficial breadth.
So, why the 0? Well, to understand why, we need to look at what the principal examiner reports are actually saying. There are 3 major warnings directly from the examiners regarding Section 1.1. First, students forget to include the proper format for indirect data sources, which loses incredibly easy marks. Second, they completely ignore presentation checks, meaning they fail to use proper headings, correct terminology, or clear annotations. And third, just like our 0-mark example, their answers are not specific to the context given in the exam scenario. This is exactly why ordinary revision, just memorizing the textbook, completely fails. You can't just know what census data is, you have to know exactly how it behaves in context.
This crucial point is summarized perfectly by this one examiner quote. Candidates referencing cross-topic connections achieve significantly higher marks. You see, the theoretical architecture of this syllabus rests on precise definitions, causal relationships, and integration. The top-performing students exhibit a connected, conceptual understanding that they can actually transfer to totally unfamiliar contexts. It's not about rote memorization at all, it's about building a robust, analytical architecture in your mind.
Section 1.
The high-mark framework. So if generic answers are getting us 0 marks, how do we actually construct a top-tier response? Well, the absolute foundation of everything is the method mark strategy. Method marks are awarded for the logical process and for showing you're working, even if your final answer turns out to be completely incorrect. This is literally your ultimate safety net in the Cambridge IGCSE exam. When you're extracting information from complex texts and tables, your procedural framework matters just as much as your final conclusion. To guarantee you capture every single one of those method marks, you need a structural architecture for your higher-order assessment objectives. And that is exactly where PEEL comes in. Point, evidence, explanation, link, and judgment. Every single time you construct an argument regarding indirect data, you make your point, you back it up with evidence from the scenario, you explain how it works, you link it back to the question, and you provide an evaluative judgment. This step-by-step breakdown is exactly what examiners are scanning the page for when they decide whether to bump you into that top mark band. But here is the real million-dollar question. How do we actually apply this PEEL framework to Section 1.1 specifically? In just a moment, I'm going to show you the exact examiner clue that changes your answer completely. But first, you absolutely need the framework that makes that clue obvious. You need a way to instantly recall the specific data sources.
Enter our memory hack. WCER. Weather, Census, Electoral, and Research. These are your core sources of indirect data. By locking this simple acronym into your memory, you immediately know which specific formatting and presentation conventions you need to mentally retrieve the second you sit down for the exam.
Section 2. Interactive Answer Challenge.
All right, let's put this into practice and apply these frameworks to a real problem. Your task is to spot the error in comparing weather and census data. I want you to mentally pause for a second and predict exactly where a typical student is going to lose marks here. Remember those warnings we discussed earlier about lacking specific context and ignoring presentation checks? Keep those in mind.
This side-by-side comparison perfectly exposes the massive gap between an average candidate and a top-band candidate. On the left, we have the superficial, flawed answer. Weather data updates fast, census data is slow. It's incredibly vague, right? But look at the right side. Unlike the decennial census data, weather data requires dynamic formatting to track hourly relational changes. This answer applies specific, high-level terminology like decennial and dynamic formatting. It makes a clear point, it provides context, and it links the data source directly to its formatting requirement. That right there is a PEEL structure in action.
Notice exactly how the examiner expects you to break down these sources.
Weather data has a high, real-time update frequency, meaning its format convention absolutely must be dynamic and graphical. The electoral register? That's annual and tabular with strict formatting. Census data is decennial, meaning every 10 years, and requires complex relational formatting. You must use this correct terminology and understand these strict conventions to hit those academic benchmarks.
So how do you guarantee you hit these points every single time? You use the examiner-preferred deconstruct, solve, and evaluate method. First, you deconstruct the given information. Then, you break it into logical steps. You solve systematically, making sure to show you're working to secure those method marks. You check for reasonableness, and finally, you make justified recommendations. This methodology proves to the examiner that your data interpretation skills are robust and totally reliable.
Section 3. Escalating the stakes. Now that we have the fundamentals totally locked down, we're moving beyond basic application into the absolute hardest requirement for top-scoring candidates, critical comparative analysis. When the exam asks you to critically analyze or compare, you must follow these exact procedural steps. Step 1. Identify both similarities and differences. A huge trap here is only listing the differences. Step 2. Use comparative connectives like whereas, conversely, or similarly. Step 3. Support every single comparison with evidence from the provided text or table. And Step 4. Draw a solid conclusion about their relative importance. Top-scoring candidates demonstrate this evaluative thinking by questioning assumptions and considering different perspectives.
I want to take a quick second to reiterate this massive examiner alert. Even if your final answer is wrong, method marks can save you. I literally cannot emphasize this enough. When you're doing this high-level critical analysis, extracting relationships from really complex tables, you must document your thought process on the page. Show the logical steps. That is the safety net that catches you if your final calculation or recommendation somehow slightly misses the mark.
Section 4. The diagnostic cliffhanger.
Okay, we've just spent this whole time building what seems like an impenetrable exam strategy. You know the frameworks, you have the memory hacks, you know exactly how to structure a top-band analytical response. But here is where things get truly terrifying. It is entirely possible to sit down, write out a perfect Peel structure, utilize brilliant cross-topic connections, reference dynamic formatting and decennial data perfectly, and still get 0 marks. You could completely fail the question. Why? Because there is one final, unresolved problem that makes even the best structure completely useless.
That hidden cause of lost marks? It comes down to one single thing: the command word. The command word is the verb that dictates the exact mark band and structural requirements of your answer. If you fundamentally misread or misunderstand the command word, your perfectly structured answer is just answering a question the examiner didn't actually ask.
These command words are the literal gatekeepers of your grade. For example, describe keeps you locked in the descriptive lower levels, while evaluate demands alternative comparisons and justified recommendations. If you don't instantly recognize the precise requirements of these different verbs, your exam strategy is still dangerously incomplete.
To make sure you don't fall into this final trap and to get the crucial missing piece to your exam survival, you need to take action right now. Subscribe to our YouTube channel, Ace the Exams, at acetheexams_IGCSE to excel in your Cambridge examinations.
Up next, we're going to decode the exact command words that decide your mark band, because let me ask you, do you actually know the exact difference between describe and evaluate? If you don't, your perfectly structured answers might still be earning 0 marks. Click the explainer on your screen right now to lock down those final top-tier grades, and I'll see you there.